While a handful of engine types have become mainstream today, throughout the automotive history, many wild and experimental ones were put into production as well. Hey guys, Stype here with a list of cars with the craziest engines ever. Let's go. Mercedes-AMG F1. Let's start the list with the holy grail of the automotive world, a car with an actual Formula One engine. This is such a difficult thing to pull off that so far only 4 manufacturers have attempted it, and among these only Mercedes did it properly. The problem is F1 engines don't exactly work in the real world. They need a lot of cooling, which is a problem when you're sitting in a traffic light. They also idle too high, produce too much CO2, and don't last very long, and don't even have a starter motor. That's why by the time these engines find their way into road legal production cars, they tend to go through more changes than a Caterpillar. I mean, just compare the same engine of the Ferrari F1 car and the Ferrari F50 road car. That's not the same at all! And the same thing happened with the Carrera GT and the Beamer M5. But the AMG F1 is a different story. 7 years after it premiered, the crazy Germans finally figured out how to domesticate that 1.6-liter F1 engine for road use without changing it too much. Basically, fewer revs, preheat the catalytic converter, and a few other doodads. It still has the same block, the same EV boost mode too. The gas tank needs to be depressurized before refueling or else, boom, and the whole engine needs a rebuild after just 30,000 miles. I know this term is thrown around a lot, but the AMG F1 really is an F1 car for the road. Mazda Repo. And then there was this thing, the 1974 Mazda's rotary engine pickup truck, or as they call it, the Repo. Or is it Repu? Repu. So far, this is the only factory-produced truck with a Wankel. But why? Why did Mazda think that this would sell? Spoiler alert, it didn't. Because at the time, American cars were extremely unreliable. On average, a brand new one had 25 defects straight out of the factory. No wonder the Japanese imports were sweeping over the American market with their better quality even before Mazda showed up with this revolutionary rotary engine. Its biggest selling point? It only had 1/3 of the parts compared to a piston engine, so it won't break down as much. I know, it sounds hilarious today, but back then, Wankels really were more reliable options. That aside, a rotary was simply not a good option for a working man's truck, even if it's a mini one. In case you didn't know, these engines don't make much torque, and the little that they do, it's all at the top end of the rev range. That's terrible if you have to haul some weight around in that bed. It would be like getting yourself one of those pug dogs to guard your house. All it would do is bring out the best Ronaldo out of your intruder. In conclusion, it's a useless truck, but people still like it though. Anyway, Citroen 2CV Sahara. The 2CV was a simple car. Tinfoil body, textile roof, a small engine driving the front wheels, and a set of park benches for the seats. Anything more and it would cost more, which is not a good thing for a car that was aimed to be an upgrade over the horses. And by that logic, the 2CV Sahara was aimed to do the same, but with camels. Naturally, for the Saharan region, it needed 4-wheel drive, and the way Citroen made it happen was freaking hilarious. Are you ready?
Voy a la playa, había subido la marea.
But it's not funny though. Developing a proper 4-wheel drive system and then re-engineering the car to fit around it is expensive business, and expensive is not in the 2CV's dictionary. As a result, the Sahara has 2 keys, 2 fuel tanks, 2 gearboxes linked to the same shifter, and you guessed it, 2 separate engines linked to the same gas pedal. Besides, 2 engines have some benefits too. If one stops working, the other one can still get you home. You can also switch from 4 to front-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive just by turning the keys on and off. And lastly, there's the extra horsepower too. While the regular 2CV topped out at just 40 mph, the Sahara could go 65, which is a terrifying experience in this tinfoil of a car. Or maybe not. What's the worst that could happen? It's not like you're gonna hit a tree in the desert. Cadillac V864 models. I guess Cadillac saw the Sahara 2 and thought, hey, how about this? Instead of turning on or off the entire separate engine, why not do the same with just part of a really big one? That's the idea behind the V864 engine, and on paper, it was a clever one. You had a big old V8 firing on all cylinders when you needed more grunt, but when you were up to cruising speed, the so-called computer command module would deactivate some of the cylinders, making it a V6 or even a V4. This saves a lot on fuel without sacrificing any power. It's a win-win, so no wonder Cadillac ditched every other engine once the 864 came out. Too bad it didn't work.
Sounds good, doesn't work.
The computer module just couldn't keep up with the ever-changing conditions of the real world. It would react too late at times, and at certain speeds. It would just get confused on how many cylinders should be active, switching between 4, 6, or 8 way too often. And all of this meant that driving the 1981 Caddy road yacht was anything but an elegant experience. They were too jerky and they sounded broken most of the time. No wonder that just 1 year later, the V864 was a goner. Still, the industry learned from this failure, and today we have a working deactivation tech on engines as small as Ford's Inline 3 and up to Lambo's V12. Thanks, Cadillac. Volkswagen Passat W8. And now one of the most unremarkable, most forgettable, most boring cars ever made. The 5th generation VW Passat. Oh, hang on just a sec. Seriously, if this car was a spice, it would have been more like flour. It was just some car, 2 body styles, 4 wheels, a giant selection of 4 to 6 cylinders, petrol or diesel engines found in many other things from the VW group. Basically, nothing special, except for this one. The W8 Passat is one of the craziest, most ridiculous cars ever made. It's the only car ever to have been made with a W8 cylinder. And that fact right there puts other manufacturers to shame. Rolls, for example, would make a fully functional V16 Phantom and then stick it in a museum. The Volkswagen bosses, on the other hand, snorted in a line of ass, probably, and then they said, screw it, let's put it into production! So what's so crazy about a W8? Oh, you know, it's a cut-down version of the Veyron's W16 and Bentley's W12. Think about it, W8 plus W4 plus a pair of turbos, and you have a Bentley. Another VW and a pair of turbos, and now you got a Bugatti. It's an oversimplification, but you get the idea. So how good is the cut-down Veyron engine? Well, it is compact and smooth, and it sounds like nothing else on the road. But the numbers aren't its strongest suit. It was also super complicated and not very reliable, but hey, girls will love the fact that your regular car has a Bugatti engine.
Kill me.
Chrysler Turbine. But if you wanted to get real crazy, you have to go with the Chrysler. They once made a car with an actual jet engine in it. Yes, a jet engine. Compress the air, blows it at some fan blades, which turn the wheels and make it go. It's called the Turbine, and despite being produced 55 times, this car from the future was actually a test mule for its jet technology. But the way Chrysler conducted these tests was unorthodox, to say the least. They simply gave out 50 of them to randomly selected people all over the country to look it up and let them use it as their dailies. So did it work? Yes. Apart from a slight vacuum cleaner noise going down the road and 0 vibrations from the engine, the Turbine drove like a regular 1950s Chrysler. It had regular brakes, regular transmission, and even the wheels were circular. Engineers went through great lengths to make this car behave just like a car. Well, okay, but there was the fact that it idles at 20,000 RPM and can burn any kind of fuel, oil, tequila, or Chanel No. 5 perfume. But on the other hand, you didn't need any special training to learn how to operate it. It was a supremely reliable vehicle too, given how few parts make up a jet engine. But the lack of such cars on the road today should tell you that the Chrysler Turbine didn't take off. The jet engine was just too expensive to produce, and the whole any fuel advantage wasn't a big deal at a time when oil was cheaper than air. Oh, and it also produced CO2 like a jet plane. I bet Taylor Swift would love to own one. Oh, f*** off, Taylor. Anyway, it's time for honorable mentions. Let's see if you can guess them. And at number 1, Tucker 48. Here we go. But what sort of thing could top the jet car, you might be asking? This thing, the Tucker 48, which did go into production and wasn't just some prototype. It was something of a Tesla Model S from the 1940s, in a way that it pioneered many features that were way ahead of its time. Like this central headlight that swiveled as the wheels were turning, or the disc brakes, tubeless tires, an integrated roll bar, shatterproof windshield, and so much more. But the most interesting thing was at the back. There's no other way of saying this, so I'm just gonna say it. It had a helicopter engine. I mean, of course, they had to modify it for road use, like adding a water cooler, having it connected to a gearbox and stuff, but initially, its 0335 flat six was designed for this. Choppa! Again, did it work? Oh, hell yeah, it did, very much so. It ran smoothly, churned out a respectable 160 horses, it had enough torque to pull nicely in any gear, no matter the revs, and it was reliable as fuck. Remember, these engines were built to run at full throttle for hours and hours, so trundling along in a car at half speed is nothing for them. Too bad that Preston Tucker, the owner of the company, wasn't as good as a businessman as he was as being a visionary, which is why the Tucker Automotive Company died just after 2 years and 50 cars made. Shame. And that's the list. Like, subscribe, all that jazz, and cut! Damn, I gotta go take a shit all of a sudden.